So if you're watching yesterday, we were just watching one area. Now we're watching two. It's like the tropics have come alive very quickly here. And this is what we were anticipating as the shear was dropping in the Gulf. We have those warm waters in place. It's not going to take much to get one of these storms going. A 30% chance of development. This is the area generally as it moves to the north and towards the northwest. We're talking towards the Sunshine State, and that will bring some very heavy downpours and some tropical moisture along the Sunshine State. Think about how waterlogged Miami and the surrounding areas already are from the rain that we saw last week from the unnamed tropical disturbance. Doesn't matter if this has a name or if it gets one or if it doesn't. It's still going to bring some really intense tropical moisture and rain. It's something to watch very carefully over the next couple of days. And the reason why it's going to be steered towards Florida is the fact that it's stuck under this area of high pressure. This is bringing the heat to the 95 corridor and parts of New England and the Northeast. It's all tied together because it's going to be stuck under that ridge of high pressure, and it only has one way to go. Now, it depends on exactly the strength of that high pressure and the exact placement of it by mid to late week, exactly where this travels towards the Florida direction. Is it more towards South Florida? Is it more towards North Florida and maybe coastal Georgia and the Carolinas? That's something to watch, but the chances, at least, of a tropical depression over the next couple of days, you can see these green colors, that's at least a 30 to 40% chance, and that means it needs monitoring very closely. Let's look at some of the low-level spin in the atmosphere as we look towards the next couple of days. You see this area, it's trying to get its act together as it moves just north of the Bahamas and then generally towards Florida. But this is Thursday, so we have a couple of days to watch this, and we have a couple of days to work out some of the details with the forecast. But we do know that heavy rain is on the way, and we have seen more than enough of that as of late. In fact, Lynette, you were just in Florida covering some of the flooding that was happening there, and we can family outside. The rest of the week, though, not as promising. All that tropical moisture that Lynette was just talking about, that's going to be streaming in. So really enjoy today. Take advantage of today. Let's start the clock on Monday, where we will see some showers streaming in. This is not too uncommon for Houston this time of year, right? But then we get to Tuesday, and that moisture gets more intense. It gets heavier. It gets more consistent throughout the day. By Tuesday evening, it is still raining in Galveston. It is still raining in Houston. Areas just north of Houston, like Conroe, over to Liberty, which have seen a lot of flooding as of late. I mean, we're already saturated in southeastern Texas. This is an area that's been no stranger to rain as of late. So we put more moisture on top of saturated ground. I think flash flooding is going to happen very quickly. This is the European model, but we're seeing some big differences right now between the European model and the American model when it comes to the Houston area, Galveston, and the greater area around southeastern Texas. Now, if you were to believe the American model, we're talking over a foot of rain, and it does not take that much to flood in Houston. In fact, it's on the lower end of the scale. This is something that warrants monitoring very closely throughout the week and some planning as the week goes on, so you don't find yourself in a situation where you're stuck in an area that you know typically floods and you have no way to get out. Let's take you over to New Orleans and the Biloxi area, where you're also anticipating tropical moisture moving in, and this is another area that is very flood prone. You can see flooding in New Orleans on just a typical afternoon thunderstorm, but this is not your typical afternoon thunderstorm. By Monday, we have rounds of moisture moving in. Tuesday, a lot of this is directed more at the Texas area, and that leaves New Orleans on the drier side. But still, any kind of wobble in that forecast of bringing some more of the tropical moisture farther to the east, that would change things for you in New Orleans, and a forecast that you also need to monitor very closely. The American model and, of course, the European model, slight differences, but they're more in agreement for Louisiana than what we're talking about in Texas. Let's take you over to the Lake Charles area. Any drive on the I-10 corridor for this upcoming week is going to be a little stressful, to say the least. We're talking, make sure your windshield wipers are in working order today, because you will need them this week. This is Tuesday, 5 p.m., where we're looking at heavy rain across the Lake Charles area over towards Beaumont, Texas, and of course driving down towards the Houston area. That's where a majority of this tropical moisture is going to be streaming in, but we could very well see flooding in Lake Charles as well. Now, this is, once again, we're going to show you two different models because they're not quite in agreement in many areas. 1 to 2 inches of rain in Lake Charles, that's the European model, but the American model says 3 to 5 inches of rain, and any training of thunderstorms, Lynette, we know how this goes. Those amounts can easily go up.
All right, Molly, thank you.
I mean, Houston can see flooding from just a few thunderstorms, and this is just not your run-of-the-mill summer thunderstorms. Let's talk timing. Today, Two thumbs up in Houston. I mean, it's going to be hot, but it usually is in the summertime. And we could see a few scattered showers. Same deal for Monday, but Tuesday things start to change. We see more of that tropical moisture that's streaming in. Galveston, the I-10 corridor, Beaumont, even over to Lake Charles, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it doesn't stop throughout the day on Tuesday. So we're bringing in more moisture consistently. There's no time really for the ground and some of the drainage systems to recover, and we're putting more rain on top of that. And not to mention, it's saturated in southeastern Texas. I mean, think about all the flooding we had just a month ago in early May. We haven't had a lot of time to recover from that, and now we're putting more rain on top of that. Now, New Orleans, both of the models are looking a little more optimistic for you, as you're not going to see quite as much rain, but still warrants watching as we go throughout the week, because if we see that tropical moisture start to shift back to the east, that would put New Orleans more in the zone for heavier rain, and we could easily see flooding in New Orleans just from a few training thunderstorms. Now, Lake Charles, you're in the middle of that, and you will likely see some heavier rain coming through starting on Monday evening, but even continuing throughout the day on Tuesday, with a big focus of it being just to the south and just to the west of Lake Charles. But it'll continue to move in and put rounds of rain, and it'll add up in pretty quick order for many of us in Lake Charles, but also Houston, southeastern Texas, Conroe, Liberty, many areas that have seen a lot of flooding as of late. Now down to the Corpus Christi area and Brownsville, where it has been roasting hot as of late. We're going to see some showers, which of course will help cool us down, but most of the rain is going to be just to your north. This is very similar to what we were seeing in New Orleans, where it warrants watching, also warrants watching in Mobile, but you're a lot further east to this tropical moisture than, say, in a place like New Orleans.